Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paramajakacharya Tadasata Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Advaita Srimad Bhāgavatam Ki Sambheda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Gaur Premanandi. All glories to Semel devotees. All glories to Semel devotees. All glories to Semel devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamhyam Didati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Pada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhunam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we've got a bunch of verses today. We're doing 3.18.25 all the way through 28. Is that right? I think that's what's on the roster. 3.18.25 through 28. None of these verses have any purports. So we can collectively read the first one, and then and then after that I'll just read them on my own. Nayavad esha vardheta Nayavad esha vardheta Swam velam prapya darunaha Swam velam prapya darunaha Swam deva mayam asthaya Swam deva mayam asthaya Tavajjahyagam achyuta Tavajjahyagam achyuta Nayavad esha vardheta Sang velam prapya darunaha Swam deva mayam asthaya Tavajjahyagam achyuta Nayavad esha vardheta Swam velam prapya darunaha Swam deva mayam asthaya Tavajjahyagam achyuta Nayavad esha vardheta Swam velam prapya darunaha Swam deva mayam asthaya Tavajjahyagam achyuta Nayavad esha vardheta Swam velam prapya darunaha Swam deva mayam asthaya Tavajjahyagam achyuta Na yavaresha vardheta swam velam prapya darunaha swam deva mayam asthaya tabajjahya ghamachyuta na yavadesha vardheta swam velang prapya darunaha swam deva mayam asthaya tavajjahya ghamachyuta nayavat before eshaha this demon vardheta may increase swam his own velam demoniac hour prapya having reached darunaha formidable swam your own deva O Lord mayam internal potency asthaya using tavat at once jahi kill agham the sinful one achyuta O infallible one. So this verse translates as Brahma continued, my dear Lord, you are infallible. Please kill this sinful demon before the demoniac hour arrives and he presents another formidable approach favorable to him. You can kill him by your internal potency without doubt. I'll just read this again myself only. Brahma continued, my dear Lord, you are infallible. Please kill this sinful demon before the demoniac hour arrives and he presents another formidable approach favorable to him. You can kill him by your internal potency without doubt. So this is verse 26. Esha goratama sandhya lokachambat kari prabho upasarpati sarvatman suranam jayam abaha. So this one translates as, my Lord, the darkest evening which covers the world is fast approaching. Since you are the soul of all souls, kindly kill him and win victory for the demigods. This is 27, I guess then. Adhunaisho bijin nama yogo mahurtiko hyagat shivaya nastvam suhrdam ashu nishtara dustaram. The auspicious period known as Abhijit, which is most opportune for victory, commenced at midday and has all but passed. Therefore, in the interest of your friends, please dispose of this formidable foe quickly. So I'll reread this one. The auspicious period known as Abhijit, which is most opportune for victory, commenced at midday and has all but passed. Therefore, in the interest of your friends, please dispose of this formidable foe quickly. So this is the last verse of the chapter, and the last one we'll read. Dishyatvam vihitam mrityum ayam asadita swayam vikram yainam mridhehatva lokan adhehi sharmani. This demon, luckily for us, has come of his own accord to you, his death ordained by you. Therefore, exhibiting your ways, kill him in the duel and establish the world in peace. So I'll again read this one a second time. This demon, luckily for us, has come of his own accord to you, his death ordained by you, therefore, exhibiting your ways, kill him in the duel and establish the world in peace. So there's no purport. It says, thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of 3rd Canto, 18th chapter of the Srimad Bhāgavatam, entitled The Battle Between Lord Boar and the Demon Hiranyaksha. This is, of course, a great battle taking place between the Supreme Lord as a form of a boar and Hiranyaksha, the younger demon. So Hiranyaksha was a younger brother of Hiranyakashipu, and he was aching for a fight. So he eventually wound up challenging Varuna. Varuna suggested he find Vishnu, and here he's found Vishnu in the form of a boar, lifting the earth from the bottom of the Garbha ocean. And he's challenged Lord Boar, and now they are actually fighting. And it appears that the demigods, headed by Lord Brahma, are a little bit disturbed. They're not fully aware that the Lord has no issue at all with killing this demon, Hiranyaksha. So Lord Brahma is saying, my dear Lord, please don't mess around anymore. Just take this demon out. We are afraid, and you understand that in the darkness, the demons become very powerful. During the light of day, then the demigods have their powers and potencies, but in the darkness of night, the demons have their powers. So the demon's becoming more powerful, and you should not wait, because if you wait, the auspicious moment of Abhijit will be gone, and if the moment of Abhijit is gone, then you may not be victorious. So this shows that, at least this is the way Brahma is speaking. We don't have any actual purports on these verses, so I don't know if there's more to it than that. But what we see here actually is this understanding of the fight between the Supreme Lord and a demon. And I was thinking that it would be kind of interesting today, and we'll see what we get to today. I always have more stuff that I want to talk about that I don't have time for, but we'll see what we can squeeze in today. That when we say demon, we don't mean exactly the same thing that Christians mean when they say the word demon. Of course, most of the world is either Christian or Islamic or Judaic. So these what are known as Abrahamic religions have quite a concept of a great demon, which they call the devil. And so there may be other devils too, subservient demons to the main demon. And their purpose is to harm everyone and corrupt everyone. And that's their only joy, their only business. So this is the kind of concept that we've grown up with in the Western world. This idea of great, terrible, nasty demons, or the devil who sits on, a person's shoulder, and then you've got the angel on the other shoulder, and the devil's whispering something in your ear, and the angel's whispering something in your other ear. And therefore, humans are having to choose between these two options of the demons who are always telling you what to do to ruin your life, and the angel who's telling you what to do to save your life in a auspicious way. So even our, as far as I can tell, the image that we have in the Western world of the devil is of this kind of being with horns, and his body is red in color, and he has a tail, and he carries a pitchfork. It seems like to some extent this is borrowed from the image of Shiva, but the pitchfork especially, that's what kind of gives it away. Shiva carries a trident. And now why would the devil carry a pitchfork, of all things to carry, so... but nothing else matches up. The devil never has a snake, and Shiva's quite a benevolent personality. Although he is in charge of demoniac persons, he wishes good for them and good for everyone in general. That Shiva's a very benevolent personality. But this brings us to a larger contrast that maybe you have picked up on, or maybe you've never picked up on, and that is the contrast between the whole substructure of Vedic understanding and the modern Western religion's understanding of things. So in our modern Western religions, we have this concept of God and Satan fighting it out. That there's the story of Job where Satan comes to God and he says, God explains to Satan, you must have been on earth, and on earth you have seen my faithful servant Job. And Job says, well, all right, I can understand he's your faithful servant, but if you gave him a rough time, he wouldn't be so faithful. He would show his true colors. He's just following you because, he gets blessings from you. And God said, oh, all right, we'll put you to the test. So, then God creates all these problems for Job. And unlike what Satan predicted, Job holds fast to God, and he has all these difficulties happen to him. And so, this shows that there's this war. Sometimes the angels are actually fighting the demons, and more commonly is this idea of fighting philosophically, or fighting with propaganda to gain control of people's souls. That's the idea of what devil or Satan's supposed to be up to. He's fighting for that. It's curious, in the Western world, it's not exactly clear why God can't just do away with Satan, or just, give everybody the real scoop, and people won't follow Satan to their own ruin. And of course we have in the Western world this idea of an eternal hell, so that if, at least in Islam and Judaism, there's this idea, Christianity and Islam, there's this idea of an eternal hell. And I think for the most part in Judaism as well, that you have this idea that you can be damned eternally. You can miss the mark, and you will go down forever. Now, in Judaism, there is an idea that there is reincarnation, which is not there in Christianity, and it's not there in Islam. But it is there according to some Jewish philosophers. So therefore, the idea of eternal hell doesn't fit in well. However, there is one key thing that is present in all these three religions, in Islam, in Christianity, and in Judaism. And that's this idea of dualism. You have God fighting against Satan. So, as we said, sometimes there's actual battle, but in most cases, it's a fight of propaganda for control of people's souls. So where does, in the Vedic literature, we don't have any such thing at all. In the Vedic scriptures, there's no Satan or the devil. Maya, is the illusory energy, but she's a servant of God, and she reluctantly does her job of bewildering and beguiling the living entities to make the sugar plums dance in their heads, and they follow their own paths to some kind of ruin, But she doesn't really want to do that, but it's her duty, and she does it. And she will become a servant to someone who actually is serving the Supreme Lord. So we know that if a person becomes devoted to Krishna, then Maya, instead of alluring him, will offer her service to that person. So that's a very different thing. There's no idea of a devil, no one who wants to ruin everyone. But we do talk about demons. We have the Asuras and the Devas. Sometimes we call them the Suras and the Asuras. So Sura means clean or, pious, and Asura is the A is the privative, or the one that takes away the quality which it precedes. So the Devas, they are all, at least ostensibly, servants of the Supreme Lord, whereas the Asuras are servants of their own ego. They are convinced that they know what's best for themselves, they know what's best for everyone else, and in this way, they are a law in and of themselves, a law unto themselves, each one of them. And what we can characterize is that when we say demon, we don't mean someone who wants to necessarily ruin everyone, but it's someone who possesses a consciousness of not wanting to serve the Supreme. And usually what happens is demons are very much committed to their own sense gratification. And that's why they cause suffering to other people, because they want to enjoy. And for me to enjoy means I have to have more than what other people have. I have to have sometimes what other people have. And so for me to enjoy fully, I can't be worried about what that rolls out to be for other people. So therefore, demons are very, very committed to their own material happiness. And because they're so committed to their own material happiness, they cause suffering to others. And of course, there are countless demons. And we have this story here about Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, who are the first two big demons. They are sons of course, Diti. And then we have the Adityas. They are the sons of Aditi. And they have this contrast between these two groups of individuals, the Devas and the Asuras. Now, where does this concept of the devil actually come from? Well, I mean, these kind of things have various explanations by various people, but there does seem to be a number of sources that point to the fact that this concept of a competitor to God, almost on equal footing with God, comes from the Zoroastrian religion. So those of you who might not know, Zoroaster or Zarathustra was a important religious personality of ancient Persia, or which is now known as Iran. So this religion taught that there's a supreme being and Ahura Mazda and a demoniac being on the other side of it, which was named Angra Mainyu. So we have this dualism, which is the word that I'm trying to pivot everything around for this talk today. Dualism. So you have on one side, God, on the other side, this, anti-God, and they're fighting, which you don't see in the Vedas at all. It doesn't exist in the Vedas. But in the Abrahamic religions and many other religions as well, you have this duality. Of course, we are dual too, but not on this level, on this particular aspect. We say that there is the supreme soul and the individual soul. That's also a kind of dualism. But that's a different kind of dualism. This dualism is that you have the supreme being and a counter being, a being that is fighting against the supreme being. There's a very interesting class given by Suhotra called the Vedic Root of Western Religion, where he describes that there was a class of individuals known as Magi. I mean, since it's Christmas, most of us remember the three wise men who came from who knows where, and they came to the manger and they saw baby Jesus, and they had followed the star to get there. So this Magi, Magi actually, is another etymological root to this word, are a group of brahmanas who were sun worshippers, actually. So Magi or Magi, or in Sanskrit, Magha, that was the same group of people, they worshipped Surya, the demigod of the sun. Now, one of them was a brahmana named Jaruta. And Jaruta is mentioned in the Rig Veda. And Jaruta was an associate of Vashishta Muni. So we've heard of Vashishta. So Jaruta and Vashishta evidently had a difference of opinion at some point. And Vashishta cursed Jaruta, and Jaruta left the main part of India, and he went over to what is now Iran. Suhotra talks about we have this Kandahar now, modern name, but actually Kandahar comes from Gandhari, that this was the area that Gandhari, the wife of Dhritarashtra, was from. And there, Jaruta preached a very different philosophy from the Vedic knowledge. And so he preached the philosophy of dualism, which was, I think, had something to do with why Vashishta actually exiled him from the main part of India. So Jaruta was not only was he a worshiper of the sun god, he was also very, beholding to Varuna. Okay. So now we just learned that Hiranyaksha wanted to fight. So he went to Varuna to challenge him. And actually, according to, the overall Vedic picture, Varuna is one of the demigods who has actually some sway or control over the demons. He's actually like Shiva. He has some affinity for the demons, and they kind of follow him to a certain extent. And so this is how this, Jaruta or Zoroaster, or Zoroaster is I believe, Greek name, and Zarathustra is the, I think, Persian name, but I'm not sure about that. At any rate, the concept here is that we have these Ahura Mazda, which is supposed to be the supreme being. So this Ahura Mazda is actually another name for Varuna. So this religion, or this philosophy being preached by Jaruta, is extolling and holding up the Lord of the demons, Varuna. Varuna is not a demon himself, nor is Lord Shiva, but the demons have some, as we were saying, affinity. So he's seen as the supreme being from Jaruta's point of view. Now, who is this Angra Mainyu? So this Angra Mainyu is one of, I don't remember which demigod he is, but he's actually one of the demigods. But here Jaruta is presenting him as the chief demon. So we know that when we talk about Hinduism, that the word Hindu comes from the river Sindhu, which the Middle Easterners pronounce, instead of with the S, they turn the S into an H. It's a phonological transformation. So Sindhu becomes Hindu. And we find that this, Ahura Mazda, if you take the H and you turn it to an N, or to an S, you get Asura Mazda. So this is so the good guys in Zoroastrianism are the demons. And who are the demons? And Jaruta explains that they are called devas. So it's a reverse of the Vedic system. However, along with this, we have a few other things that are peculiar to Western religion and Western philosophy. One of them is a judgment day. This also is part of Zoroastrianism, or the teachings of Jaruta, is this idea that at some point time will come to an end, and all those who have died will come back to life, and they will be judged by Ahura Mazda. So that's the idea. So we have that concept. And we have this idea that God is not able completely to defeat this anti-God, in this case, Angra Mainyu. So these things are, if you think about them, then you begin to realize how and in what fundamental ways the Vedic presentation is different. And of course, since these are mistaken themes or mistaken aspects of philosophy, they create philosophical problems for people who believe them, because if God isn't all-powerful, then what kind of God is he? And if we have a judgment day, then this has been kind of a problem, all the way through for people who, and there are some Christian groups that do believe that at the judgment day, everyone will come back to life, all and not. There was some, at least this is the way Suhotra presents it, that there were some who said that they come back in a spiritual form, but Suhotra says that there are many proponents who were adamantly against that they come back in a material form. So however you died, you come back in that form. And of course, the question was, well, if you died as a baby, does that mean you come back as a baby? Or if you died as an old man or an old woman, you come back as an old man or old woman? And the answer came out, no, you get a 30-year-old body. Okay, so so you can rest assured there. That's the way it works. And of course, you come back to this planet, to Earth, and you continue, but now Earth is perfect. And so this is all an outcropping of Zoroastrianism. Now, how did this wind up in Judaism? How did this wind up in Christianity? And that is that the various religions, they have their differences of opinion about some philosophical issues. But when some ideas become very prominent, they tend to absorb them anyways. So if we notice that Christianity grew out of the Judaic tradition, because Jesus was, of course, a teacher, but there was no Christianity when Jesus was on the planet. Everyone was, in his part of the world, mostly everyone was Jewish at that point. So people followed the Jewish laws, the Old Testament, which is known as the Torah. And we have that whole thing going on. And then gradually after Jesus left the world, then we have the advent of Christianity, and we begin to see the New Testament. And the New Testament borrowed a lot of the theology and the concepts from the Old Testament. And so necessarily Christianity borrows a lot from the tradition of the Old Testament or the Judaic tradition. Now, later on, of course, Judaism goes way back thousands of years. Christianity goes to, 0, or we could say 33 AD. And then Islam is around 500-600 AD. So Islam was also influenced by the Old Testament and by the Abrahamic religion. So these ideas are kind of accepted by all these traditions. And so I bring this up because sometimes people may misunderstand what we mean when we call people demons, or when we're talking about demons fighting or something like that. When we say that someone is a demon or demoniac, we mean that they are very committed to their own sense gratification. And that may mean that they cause others to suffer in a very unpleasant way, etc., etc. But what we mean by demoniac in particular is that someone is committed to their own sense gratification. Certainly, in this story that we're reading now, Hiranyaksha was totally bamboozled by his own false ego. He thought he was better than anyone. And he just wanted to fight with somebody so that he could prove that he was better. And he was expert in insulting others. We have all these characteristics of the demoniac in 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, divine and demoniac natures, that they are, harsh, arrogant, conceited, deceitful. They say that there's no God in control, that everything is produced of lust and has no other purpose, et cetera, et cetera. And we can relate to these because this is certainly the mood of the philosophy that we see around us everywhere, at least in the media of various kinds. That these are the themes that we see, being spoken again and again and again. So I want to kind of, there's other things I had wanted to say, but let me stop there and see if there's any questions or discussion about what I've covered so far. I just thought this was an opportune time to discuss this idea of the difference between what we mean by the concept of demon and what generally in our modern religious context that word connotes.
Yeah, thank you, Maharaj, for clearing that up. I think that, it's like you mentioned, because we have such this Abrahamic influence. Sometimes when we think demon, we think, like you mentioned, spiky, thorns and
Mm-hmm.
trident, and so I think hearing you today, it really helps to put things in the right perspective. As far as the demoniac, when Prabhupada mentions so often the demoniac mentality, the demoniac people. So, thank you.
Yeah. Well, we also have in Bhagavad Gita that those who do not follow scriptures are considered. What's that verse? I'm trying to think. What number is it? What is it? 16? 1623. Okay, let me see if I can get to it real quick. Yeah, right. He who discards scriptural injunction and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. So this is kind of the, you know, basic definition. What makes a demon is they discard scripture. Well, one thing we have to say is oftentimes demons don't completely discard scripture, but what they do is use scripture to their own purpose. There was a story, I'm trying to find it again, but I don't know where I read it. There was a story about how, some animal died in the forest, and there's a jackal and a crow and another, scavenger type animal, and they're arguing over the corpse, and each one is citing scriptures, but the whole point is, that the jackal is saying we should eat it right now, and the one of the other animals say no, we should wait till later because, although they're quoting scriptures, it's obvious that the only reason that they're quoting the scripture is because it suits their particular purpose. It means that they get a better shot at the carrion than the other one would get, So this is kind of the nature of demoniac. You could see that in the dialogue between Hiranyaksha and Lord Bor or Varahadev that, Hiranyaksha says, why don't you face me? Is there no shame that you are running from an enemy? It's kind of, citing Kshatriya code that, why don't you stand and fight, what does he care? It's just he, as far as he's concerned, he's his own law. He wouldn't necessarily feel that way if it was if the idea was switched over on the other side. But because in this case the law is in his favor, he's quoting it, or like when in the Battle of Kurukshetra, Karna, his chariot sinks into the mud, and Karna is pleading with Arjuna to give him a chance to pull his chariot out of the mud, and Krishna is telling Arjuna to shoot him right now, and Arjuna is hesitating because it's against Kshatriya code to fight someone who's not actually able to properly fight. And Karna is protesting. He's telling, Krishna, why are you telling Arjuna to shoot? This is against Kshatriya code. Where is the chivalry? Where is the religion in what you're doing? And Krishna said, my dear Karna, was it religion when you and the Kauravas disrobed Draupadi? Where was your religion then? So Krishna turns the whole thing around on him. He's saying that all these times you didn't care much about religion then. Where was your religion when they had the house of lac? Where was your religion when we had the poison that was being, et cetera, et cetera? All these different ways that the Pandavas were dealt with in a completely underhanded and irreligious way. So after he said that, of course, then Arjuna shoots, Karna. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked this class that you gave. Kind of looking at the basis of like what our modern conception is, what Gopal Prabhu was saying is of a demon. I have a question and another potential question.
Mm-hmm.
The first was you mentioned that the Jaruta who went to where is now Iran was cursed. I was wondering if you know what that curse was.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Suhotra doesn't mention it in his video.
Okay.
But he does mention that Iran is actually Arya Desh, that the Iran comes from Arya, so that it was the land of the Aryans, so that's the etymology of the name of the country, so at least that's the way he puts it. All these things, there are people who have different theories about how all this took place. But I was surprised that I've run across a number of sources that seem to give the same overall picture. Only Suhotra knows about this Jaruta part of it. But as far as the idea of duality, as far as the devil and Judgment Day and all this kind of stuff, that definitely a lot of sources pin that back on the Zoroastrian tradition. So that's where it seems to originate from. And later on it was assimilated into Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and for that matter, some other religions too. Yeah.
You said something interesting, and I've heard it before, but I think it kind of popped up here, where Maya serves the servant of her master.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, like, we spend so much time trying to keep Maya out, but what does it look like when she's serving a pure devotee? How can she be used in service? I mean, I'm pretty sure Shiva does it, but any examples of like devotees in like real life, how they've used her?
When Maya is serving? Well, in one sense, the devotee is not interested in what Maya has to offer. But since Maya is a devotee herself, then she naturally is wanting to serve other devotees. And generally she can't, because her whole business is distracting non-devotees from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So she relishes the opportunity to try to serve a devotee. I don't know of any particular instance where I've read where it actually comes to pass that she is serving, but at least that's the way it's described. I think Krishna Kripa had a question.
The pastime of Vidura being thrown out of the palace, that he took that as an opportunity to go on pilgrimage. Although from from the external point of view, it seemed like an act of Maya, that
Yeah.
a respectable person like a saint was, but he didn't take it out there. He saw that Maya's giving him an opportunity to go on pilgrimage.
Right, right. That's a good example. That it would seem like a very difficult situation, but actually it was certainly Maya who inspired Duryodhana to do that, to insult Vidura and to insult him in a very harsh and crude way. So and at that point also Vidura realized that Dhritarashtra was kind of a bump on a log. He wasn't getting it either, so he might as well leave. So he did, and as a result, he was able to travel to various places of pilgrimage. So the Maya by both Duryodhana and his father, was serving Vidura the opportunity to break free and travel and see various holy places, instead of being cooped up in Hastinapur. You had a question?
I just add one other thing too, that this Judeo-Christian culture we're brought up in has like an influence on us, like as devotees, because like the whole idea of taking a day off, right? Even God has a day of rest, So
Yeah.
so all the. But like Lord Chaitanya didn't take a day off, and Prabhupada didn't take a day off, and my guru doesn't take a day off. But all these people, they were so much brought up into this world, where Judeo-Christian world, where even God takes a day off. So it's just seems perfectly natural.
Yeah. Actually, one of the other things that I forgot to mention is that Suhotra brings up the other aspect, that what religion seems to be about is not serving God, but following certain rituals and whatever it is to please God. But the ultimate purpose is that one then will go to heaven where they enjoy eternally. So in other words, you've kind of, once you've gotten there, you've got your free ticket, and you've got an all stage pass. You can go to any of the rides or whatever is going on in heaven, But it's very different from the concept of going to the spiritual world where you're serving God, and you realize that happiness is within the service, not within having angels wait on you or having all the glorious glamour of heaven, which is also described in the Vedas. I think we know more about heaven than the Christians do, but we don't want to go there. We want to go beyond it.
Just real quick, I just wanted to ask about demonic possession if we're from a Vedic perspective. Because you see it in like Judeo-Christian, like what that kind of looks like via the media or whatever. So I'm just interested.
Well, in general, we have in the Sanskrit, we learn about the what's known as the Stula Sharira and the sometimes Shukshma Sharira, the subtle body and the gross body. So the Linga Sharira is usually the subtle body, and the gross body is the Stula Sharira. And they are connected through the life heirs. But there are certain things that cause a disconnection between the gross body and the subtle body. Particularly intoxication does this. But also extreme emotional disturbance and other things can cause it as well. And this is what we commonly know as either schizophrenia or mental disease, where people have, because of either prolonged intoxication or some cases disease, or in other cases because of emotional disturbance, the connection between the gross body and the subtle body is weakened, When it is weakened, then disembodied entities that exist in the world around us, thankfully we're not aware of them most of the time. At least most people aren't, but some people are aware of them. These disembodied entities can come in and, kind of push the soul that's just basically hanging in there out from behind the wheel, and they can drive the car for a while. So basically, that's kind of what you're getting with demoniac possession, where some discarnate entity is for a while able to take charge of the chariot of the body for a period of time, and then while he's taking charge of the body, then the body does things that are different from what the original living entity might have wanted to do. And in our modern world, we think of that as schizophrenia, and we think of that as usually a mental disease. But in fact, it's what's happening is that one living entity is being possessed by various other living entities. Of course, this can also happen to people who practice Kundalini. This can also happen to people who do various other yogic processes that are not particularly recommended. So that you can, in the same way, damage the internal connection between your subtle body, your life airs, and the gross body. There's a balance there. And if a person is healthy and not engaged in intoxication, not engaged in a lot of stress, then all those will kind of remain more or less balanced. But if that gets off, then these other things can happen. Of course, if you're chanting Hare Krishna on a regular basis, and generally speaking, these subtle living entities that are discarnate will give you a wide berth. They'll leave you alone for the most part. And that's why, it's another reason to chant Hare Krishna, that you can avoid any disturbance from, living entities that are looking for something to play with, All right, any other final questions? We're a little bit over time, but I can take one more if it's a short question. All right, so we'll let you all go to breakfast. Thank you all very much for your kind attention. All glories to Srimad Bhāgavatam, all glories to the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. Hare Krishna.